Hi English 101, this is Laura Klein in Volume 2 of Things I Might Have Said in Class, and this one is about effective sentences, which is one of the chapters that I had you read in your Little Brown Essentials Handbook. What you might have noticed in that chapter is that there's a whole lot of information in it, and that the information, it's kind of information overload. A lot of things that you may have not even thought about to think about sentences. So I'm going to kind of distill out some of the important points from that chapter. And to be able to identify whether or not a sentence is effective, you first need to make sure it's a sentence. And this is one of the topics it goes over, identifying your subject and verb, or your main clause in your sentence. So every sentence, that we may have learned this from sentence mapping at some point, it requires two things. It needs a subject and a verb, or a subject and a predicate. The only time a sentence doesn't have a subject and it's still a grammatical sentence is if it's a command. So if I'm telling you to do something, but then my subject is implied. It's you. So if I say, go to your room or do your homework, that's a whole sentence, but it's a special case. In all other cases, a sentence needs a subject. A lot of those times, those subjects are persons, places, or things. Oops. Also known as nouns. That place, that's the Eiffel Tower. I am a very talented artist. And sometimes they're pronouns, and pronouns are just another part of speech that replaces a noun. I, you, we, they, he, she. Okay? So that subject is the thing that's going to be doing something in the sentence, and the thing they're doing is a verb or an action word, except sometimes they're not so active. And a not so active verb would be like to be or to like. You're not really doing anything there, just being or liking or becoming, whatever, but still a verb. So, in a sentence, for example, Jim ran to the gym. I don't know why I'd do that, but you have a subject and a verb, right? Jim, and what is he doing? He's running. And in example 2, we have trees and telephone poles, and both of them reach towards the sky. So in this case, we have two subjects. Oh no, that's fine. You also might have two verbs. Laura might sing and dance at her sister's recital. That wouldn't be very nice. So there might be two subjects, two verbs. There might be, if it's a complex sentence, all kinds of different subjects and verbs. So if I say, my grandma likes whales, but she doesn't like dolphins, then my grandma and she are both subjects, and likes and doesn't like are both verbs. Okay, so once we've established that we have a complete sentence on our hands, then we can go and start talking about how to make those sentences more effective. And I've kind of pulled stuff out of all of the different sections to kind of distill it into some rules for making your sentences effective. The first thing that you want to pay attention to when you're looking at your sentences is the word order. They call it emphasis in your book. And you want to have emphasis on the main clause. And what's the main clause? It's the part of the sentence that contains the subject and the verb. And one way to do that is to avoid passive voice. No unpassive voice. So passive voice is when instead of having subject, verb, object, like Mike is doing something. What's he doing? He's loving. Who's he loving? He's loving Tanya. We add an additional verb in there, and that verb is usually to be or to have. So Tanya, now she's the object of Mike's love. She's not the subject. She's not actually doing anything in the sentence, so she probably shouldn't be first. Tanya is, that's to be, loved by Mike. That's kind of wonky. That's passive voice. So word order or emphasis is one of the things that you want to pay attention to. Another thing you want to pay attention to is balance. And balance, your book calls parallelism. I put an extra R in there, but I did a very nice revision. So if this is a scale, if a sentence is a scale, you don't want the scale to tip to one side or another, because you have wonky words. I keep saying wonky today. So if I have a subject, a verb, and an adjective on one side, I want to have something kind of similar on the other. And the thing that balances it in the middle is usually a thing called a conjunction. We'll talk more about these things when we talk about things like run-on sentences and different types of sentences. But this is what it's talking about when it says parallelism. So if I have, the night sky is pretty, but the blue sky is clear, those have the same kinds of words on both sides of the conjunction. So the scale is balanced. So that's another thing to look for in effective sentences. Number 3 and 4. Number 3 is variety. So what often happens when we're writing is we get into a pattern of writing. And this can mean a lot of things. A lot of times it means sentence beginnings are the same. There is, there are, there is, he said, she said, he said, she said. Too repetitive. You don't want your writing to be repetitive. Another way to be repetitive is to have a bunch of short, choppy sentences or a bunch of really long, complex sentences. You want to vary that to make your writing more effective. The second part is detail and exactness. And you want to add more detail or exactness without being wordy or redundant, but you want to go from the abstract to the specific. And a lot of the chapter on, there's a chapter on detail, part of the chapter, but there's also a part on exact words. And a lot of what that chapter on exact words is talking about is going from something abstract to something more specific. So if I have a really abstract word, like beautiful, I want to say something more specific than beautiful, because beautiful is a subjective experience. So I experience it differently than you might experience it. We think different things are beautiful, so I have to give more exact words to describe what that means. Other examples of being an exact are things like cliches and all of the other things that are listed in that chapter under exact words. But the whole idea of that is that you want to move from being more abstract to more specific. So instead of just saying, you know, there are lots of trees being cut down every day in the rainforest, you want to give an exact number for that. And then the last thing that I have is appropriateness. And appropriateness, there are a lot of words or a lot of examples of things in the chapter on appropriate words, like not using sexist language, not using slang, not using all different kinds of potentially offensive language. And the most important part to know whether or not you're using appropriate language is to know your audience. So there you are, standing up on the stage, and you've got all these people out here in your audience reading your writing, and so what you need to do is know who those people are. If you're writing for an academic audience, it's clearly very different than writing an email to a friend, or maybe writing an email to an employer, writing a report. All of these different things have different audiences. So one of the really important considerations of writing is to know your audience. You're going to have a quiz on basic sentence skills, and that'll mostly concern the stuff that is at the very beginning of this presentation on subjects and verbs and sentences. So please let me know if you have any questions. Read the rest of the announcements underneath this video.